The morning sun had barely touched the windows of the old mansion when the house filled with the tense silence that always followed Elena wherever she went. She stood near the grand staircase, her hands trembling slightly as she stared at the wedding dress laid across the sofa. It was beautiful white silk, delicate lace, a dress most girls would dream of wearing. But to Elena, it felt like chains behind her. The sharp clicking of heels echoed through the hall. Her stepmother, Victoria, entered with the same cold elegance she carried every day. Her lips curled into a thin smile as she looked at the dress, then at Elena. "Well," Victoria said calmly, "why are you still standing there? The ceremony begins in 2 hours." Elena swallowed. "Please, don't make me do this." Victoria's expression hardened instantly. "You will marry him," she said flatly, "whether you like it or not." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "He's a stranger, and he's poor. Everyone says he lives on the streets. Why would you do this to me?" Victoria laughed softly, a cruel sound that echoed in the room. "Because," she replied, stepping closer, "this family belongs to me now. Your father made the mistake of leaving part of his fortune in your name. But once you marry that beggar, everything changes." Elena's heart sank. Victoria continued calmly, almost proudly. "After today, you'll disappear from this society. No one will care about a girl who married a nobody. And eventually, the inheritance will find its way to me." The words hit Elena like I said so. That was the plan all along. Humiliate her. Destroy her reputation. Erase her from the family forever. Elena clenched her hands tightly. "Why do you hate me so much?" she whispered. Victoria's eyes turned cold. "Because your father loved you more than anything," she said, "and I will not let his precious daughter stand in my way." Downstairs, the guests were already arriving. Luxury cars lined the long driveway. Elegant men and women stepped out, whispering among themselves. "Did you hear?" one woman murmured. "They say the groom is a beggar." "A beggar? At this mansion? How embarrassing!" Laughter and shocked murmurs spread through the crowd as they walked toward the garden where the ceremony would take place. The decorations were extravagant. White roses everywhere, golden chairs, crystal chandeliers hanging from the trees. But the atmosphere was heavy with curiosity. Everyone had come for the same reason to witness the most humiliating wedding the city had ever seen. At the far end of the garden stood the groom. He wore a simple black suit that looked slightly worn. His shoes were old, and his dark hair fell loosely over his forehead. Many guests glanced at him with pity, others with open mockery. "That's him? He looks like he came straight from the streets." Poor girl! But the man stood calmly, his posture straight, his expression unreadable. His name was Daniel, and despite the whispers around him, his eyes were steady, almost confident. Victoria walked among the guests proudly, enjoying every whisper. "Oh, Victoria," a woman asked quietly, "are the rumors true? Your stepdaughter is marrying him?" Victoria sighed dramatically. "Unfortunately, yes," she said. "My late husband made terrible financial decisions before he died. This marriage was the only way to settle certain debts." The guests nodded sympathetically, though many hid amused smiles. Across the garden, Elena finally appeared. The moment she stepped outside, the entire crowd fell silent. She looked breathtaking. The white dress flowed gracefully around her, her long hair shining in the sunlight. But her eyes carried a sadness that no makeup could hide. People whispered again. "She's too beautiful for this. What a tragedy." Victoria walked to her side and gripped her arm tightly. "Smile," she whispered sharply. "Everyone is watching." Elena forced a faint smile as they approached the altar. Her eyes slowly lifted toward Daniel. For a moment, their gazes met. Something unexpected flickered in his expression. Not arrogance, not shame, but calm reassurance that confused her. Why wasn't he embarrassed? Why did he look almost amused? The priest cleared his throat and began the ceremony. The guests leaned forward eagerly. Victoria stood nearby, barely able to hide her excitement. Soon Elena would be tied forever to a poor nobody. Soon her stepdaughter's life would collapse. The priest spoke gently. We are gathered here today to unite these two souls in marriage. As the ceremony continued, whispers spread again among the guests. Some were recording with their phones. Others waited impatiently for the moment Elena would have to say, "I do." Finally, the priest turned to Daniel. "Do you take Elena as your lawful wife?" Daniel looked directly at Elena. His voice was calm. "I do." The priest nodded and turned to Elena. "And do you take Daniel as your lawful husband?" The garden became completely silent. Elena hesitated. Her heart pounded. This moment would decide everything. Victoria's sharp voice cut through the silence behind her. "Say it." Elena slowly opened her mouth. Suddenly, a loud sound interrupted the ceremony. Engines, several black luxury cars rolled through the gates of the mansion. The guests turned in confusion. The cars stopped beside the garden, and men in expensive suits quickly stepped out. They moved with urgency, and respect. One of them approached Daniel and spoke quietly. "Sir, everything is ready." The crowd froze. "Sir?" Daniel nodded slightly. Then he turned back to the priest. "Continue." But the guests were already whispering again, louder than before. Victoria's smile slowly faded. Something was wrong. Very wrong. One of the suited men walked toward the guests and announced loudly, "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the interruption. Mr. Daniel Carter's board meeting has been delayed until after the wedding." The name echoed through the garden. Several guests gasped. Daniel Carter, the billionaire investor, the owner of half the city's biggest companies. The same man who had mysteriously disappeared from public life months ago. Victoria's face turned pale. Her eyes slowly moved toward the groom, toward the poor beggar she had forced into this marriage. But now the crowd looked at him with shock, respect, even fear, and Daniel simply smiled. Astonished face.